Hello everybody, and welcome to GameGuru Max live broadcast, the first live broadcast. And first of all, we are going to test for sound. So I need a, hey yeah, if you can hear me speak. That would be cool. I have tested this before, it's a 29-second lag during the tests. So you're only going to get this 29 seconds from now. So I'm going to just stay watching the chat until I can see that there is a sound. And you'll also be able to see my own version of the live. So you'll see a receding screenshot as it goes further and further and further away. But don't worry about that. We'll get into some real visuals shortly. Just want to make sure that everything's okay. So I'm just waiting for one post to say, we can hear. Hey, yeah. Can you hear it? Can you feel it? This is live. Okay, you'll get that comment 29 seconds from now because of the said lag. But don't worry about that, you'll forget all about the lag in a couple of minutes. Now, a couple of ground rules. I have been instructed by the elders that I can only talk for 15 minutes. So I'm going to try and keep this as concise as possible, and we're going to allow a little bit of time for some relevant questions at the end. But all of the questions that you post here on the chat today, I will go through and answer everyone after the live chat. So don't worry if I don't answer you now, it will eventually be answered. So without ado, because you know me, I do like to talk, we're going to go straight into it. And the big news of the day is what technology we're going to use for our visual graphics rendering technology. So I want to show you that first. So I'm just going to go into my desktop. I'm pretty sure no one will have guessed this, but now you can see my screen, you might get some kind of idea. So I'm going to run this one, and the first person to figure out what it is. So this is a little sneak peek of the kind of visuals you're going to get with GameGuru Max. As you can see, it's a much better rendition of PBR rendering. You'll also notice that there's a sky above, that's dynamic cloud system. We're also going to get that into the software as well. So I'll move straight on to the next one. You've probably already figured it out from the title of that video. So I'll go to the next one. This was a model that I bought from an asset library, a GLTF model, and imported it and then set up a light. That would be a area sphere light cast down with shadows. It's multiple shadow casting and some really extreme blooms. So don't worry too much about the, the flashy eyeball. That's not a special effect. That's just some special setting of the bloom. And then going on to the one I've made, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about, which is we have not been idle. So if I can show you this now, go full screen, and I'm going to introduce you to the fact that what you're looking at right now is something called the Wicked engine. It's a free open source graphics engine written by a very nice guy called Janos, who works for a top AAA company and is very generously opened it up to everyone to use. It's DirectX 11, 12 and Vulkan, but we'll be focusing on DirectX 11. It's 32 or 64-bit. We're going to choose the 64-bit. And it is cram-packed with the latest modern graphical techniques you can imagine. So you can see we're going to have a bit of an acceleration here in terms of delivering GameGuru Max's main functionality, which is the stuff you actually do, the stuff you make your game with. As you can see, I've used Bandicoot. So I'll just start this again. And what you're looking at is the current version of our prototype. So we've basically taken the engine, we've stripped it down to just the bits we need, and then started experimenting with getting in assets, getting things moving, making sure it's fast and wonderful and stuff. And what you're looking at is 64-bit 2D and 3D rendering with all of the clever lighting thing that you'd want to expect in GameGuru Max. So we are using the Wicked engine, and we've also started to bring on some team now. So for the most time it was really just me planning and plotting, but now we've actually brought in an artist who's kindly already started on the assets for what will be our showcase demo. What you're looking at here is a cellar floor, because we're going to do a nice demo that's set in a cellar. And as you can see, it's actually got wet patches on the floor, and now we just poured a lot of water over everything, so now it's kind of like a slightly flooded cellar. And you can see it's a much better PBR rendition. You can actually see that you've got really high resolution texture, and of course all the different PBR layers that you'd need to achieve this kind of effect. Now imagine that applied to everything: walls, ceilings, objects, characters, effects. So and it's a huge grab bag. The Wicked engine has a lot of really clever shaders in there that will literally just be able to tap into. No more trying to deciding, exactly how a rendering pipeline should be structured. It's already done. It's there. It's ready. Some you might accuse us of cheating, but in a good way. What it means is we can focus on the game making part rather than trying to reproduce the visuals you would expect as though you were playing a modern game. So we basically accelerated past that whole requirement and got you a graphics engine that you will be able to impress people with. So moving on quickly, I don't really want to dwell. You may have or may not have seen this, but if you haven't and you are a pre-order user, you can actually get this now as an alpha build. Pre-order, log on to TGC account, you'll find a link, download it, you can have and play with the alpha build of GameGuru Max, which is what I'm running right now. As you can see, if you're familiar with the GameGuru Classic, that we've changed the UI quite a bit. All for the better. All of those feedbacks that we got over the years, we've just managed to cram into this new UI. It's always good to have a little bit of a refresh, because you can throw away the things that no one ever used or people thought was a bit and then you can replace it with something that actually is pretty cool. And we're really happy with this UI. I think this UI will keep us very happy for a couple of more years. So look at the sneak peek videos. That's also available on YouTube if you want to learn more about the individual aspects. But what I want to focus on is the terrain, because another team member who's recently joined us, his single responsibility now is the creation of a brand new terrain system. So the three big things that you were probably expecting to learn about is 64-bit, because you want your new software to be 64-bit. You wanted a new graphics engine, so you've just learned that's the Wicked engine. And the third leg of this tripod is the terrain system and what we're going to do with it. So we've started a detailed dev plan of everything that we need, and I just want to give you some of the highlights based on our early discussions. Obviously there's going to be a lot more talk about the technical stuff, the stuff you don't really want to know about, but still needs to happen before we can deliver you the finished product. But I can certainly show you some of the early ideas, the early decisions that we have right now. There's still more research to be done, and plans may change. But I'm happy to be able to sort of focus in on terrain for this live broadcast. And if you have any questions relating to terrain, have a good think about them as I'm talking, and I might reserve a couple of minutes right at the end just to answer some of those questions on the live chat. It'll be a little bit crazy because I'll be watching the live chat and streaming my live chat window at the same time, so it'll get a little bit crazy. In future videos we may use some of my many multi-monitors and have the chat to one side. But who knows, maybe it'd be useful for everyone to see the live chats as I'm responding to them. So any questions on terrain, I'll see if I can get to a few of them towards the end of this broadcast. But any other questions, feel free to fire them away. They'll all be answered either in a future video or as a forum post. We haven't decided yet, but certainly you will get the answers to the questions if you post them here today. That will be your reward for joining me live on the GameGuru live broadcast. So let me just run through some of the decisions that we've made. If we zoom right out, just as a precursor to what I'm going to say, everything that you see within this window, this bit, the green square and the little blue bit of sky, that's the old GameGuru, that's the old graphics engine, the old terrain system. But in order to have created the UI, we still needed something, in that little box to make stuff with, which is why you still see it. It's super useful to be able to develop software and have something that you can use almost right away, because it lends credence to all the other functionalities. But over the course of weeks and months and our sneak peek videos and our live broadcasts, you will see this window change a lot. It will change for the worst initially, as the capabilities of our graphics engine will be very limited to maybe loading in objects. But eventually you'll be able to start to see all of that lovely new visual goodness return to this window. So right now you're looking at the old GameGuru terrain, and if I keep zooming out, you'll see that's it. That is what you have been using as a world. That's the camera clip at 70,000 units in the distance. That's what you've been using for your world. And we have many levels of critique suggesting this world is not big enough. Now, I have not seen anyone do a level that populated this entire terrain. It's usually a little island of detail right in the middle, or at best, a large landscape of mountains and water bodies and stuff. But to cram it with buildings and activities and stories, a couple of reasons why people weren't doing that, what not least of which is that with 32-bit applications, you were limited to around 1.4 gigabytes of system memory. With 64-bit application, which is what GameGuru Max is going to be, that number gets a little bit bigger, like in the order of thousands of gigabytes of system memory. Of course, you need that memory in your computer, of course, to be able to use it, but the capability will then be there for you. So you could populate an area this big with buildings and all the rest of it. Or at least that's the theory. You know, I'll put a little codicil there, that's the theory. So this is the old terrain system. The new one will have built into it expandability. So you can have a smaller terrain, and then you can add another piece of terrain on the left of it, and then beyond that. So you can create variable size terrains. We're going to use what's called a node system. So the idea is that you'll have a node that contains a height map of say 1k by 1k, and then you can add another node to the left or the right of it, and then create terrain for that. So you only create the terrain where you need it. So you could just have a square of terrain and then go straight into an area of your map which is just buildings and entities. You see, so you only need terrain for exactly where you need it with GameGuru Max. Another thing that we're going to focus in on, let me just zoom back in, is the terrain painting, because everyone knows the artifact you get when you say select this one and then you paint what you think is that texture, and look what you get. This is everyone referred to as banding. That was supposed to be a feature, the fact you could blend one texture into another, but when you have to go across all these other textures, you create what's called this band. In the new terrain painting system, you would just paint that texture on there, and that's all you get. You don't get any banding. And then if you went back to grass and you painted it over there, that would be painted on top of what you just painted. Then you select this one, and that would be painted on top of it. So it's basically a layered system, whereas you paint, it actually paints all these things on top of each other, and you get exactly what you would have expected to have got, say, if this was like a sheet of glass and you were spraying colours on top of what you'd already painted. So that's what we're going to do with the new terrain system, and for that we're going to use a new technique, and we're going to take advantage as well of the acceleration of the GPU, because we've come a long way since we developed this, which was supposed to be a really clever shader that's designed for performance and lots of textures, but it really didn't work out in terms of the end result. So this time we're going to have the end result in mind and then use the GPU to get it as fast as possible. So that's the plan for terrain painting. We're going to throw in a couple of more features like randomization. So if I just randomize the terrain, this is what's called diamond square algorithm. It's basically a great algorithm for generating hills. But we're going to use other kinds of, for example, we're going to use a Perlin noise random generator, which is less for hills. Maybe you just want a little bit of undulating floor that's natural. Well, Perlin noise would let you do that. So we're going to expand how you can actually generate random terrains, not just have one that's completely hilly, let's say. And finally, the bit I found the coolest part is right now you do sculpting. You know, you raise, you lower, and that's kind of what you've got. But wouldn't it be nice if you could use another tool to import height maps? And then just say, I've already got a mountain with a really nice height map. Can I just import that? Well, we're going to look into that as well. It may be easy, it may be hard, but I think that feature is so cool. It's been requested so many times. I think in some form we'll be able to import a height map instead of you having to sculpt it one vertex at a time. Now I'm just looking at the clock, which means it will be a great idea if I just switched over to the chat window and see if there are any questions pertaining to terrain. So if you want to repost your question, that's great. The live chat for me is quick. It's live. It doesn't have a 29-second lag. So when I see it, I'll respond to it verbally. I'm not going to tap in the window. So I'm just going to scroll through. Here's a good one. What is the estimated distance in kilometers for the world diameter? Well, that's the great thing, because it's node-based. It could be as small as 1,000 inches wide, or it could be as long as however many nodes you need in that one direction. So it could be 1,000 inches wide and 20,000 inches long. It's less of a question as what's the maximum distance for terrain. It really is just, we're going to develop a system that has expandability built in. So with that, the question gets a little bit mute. And it's not infinite terrain, because just as there isn't such a thing as infinite memory. There's no such thing. Question, is this about terrain? We'll be able to change the shape of the terrain manipulation tool. That is on a roadmap, but it's not going to be a priority A feature. Being able to raise and lower with that radius tool and the size is pretty powerful. We'll have the import height map. That should certainly help you achieve many different shapes and things. And of course, the resolution of the lump that you create is much better than in GameGuru Classic. So you can actually raise a lump that's about a couple of inches wide. So you can get some really good details when you're sculpting. But in the terms of ideas for brush shapes and things, it's on our roadmap and it may well go in, but it's not going to be on a monster A priority list, for full disclosure though. Cutting holes is also in the roadmap, whether we get time to do it for release. Super useful things, but with more defined sculpting capability and the importing of height maps, you may not need to cut a hole. You can just drop a very accurate square into the ground, and the terrain just drops down and it'll be fine. Will we have multiple grasses and handle the terrain painting being on in the new terrain system? Well, I've covered the painting aspect. Yes, there will be multiple grasses. I think that's absolutely essential for a natural looking scene. We're going to cover that in a future video or a future broadcast. This one is really just about the geometry and the textures of the terrain. Grass is going to be tackled secondary. It's going to be like, once the terrain is good, it's fast, it does everything we need to do, as I've just mentioned, then we can actually go into what's covering the terrain. Is it grass? Is it shrubs? Is it trees? Is it atmospheric effects? Is it low-lying clouds? Whatever it might be. Did you insert an option set map to open world gives a little bit more? Not sure what that means. We have now shape stamp. Yeah, it would be nice to have a shape stamp tool. Yeah, it'd be something similar to that. I mean, we had circle and square as sort of brushes that seem pretty common. But then we thought, wouldn't it be really cool if you could have a bitmap and then just paint your own brush and then have that as your own brush and stamp it in? That'd be pretty useful. But again, it's one of those sort of edge cases, and we're going to get the priority things done first. Here we go. Keith C. How does the terrain system handle no-go areas such as steep hills and mountains which won't allow players to traverse up the sides of the mountains? Automatically does need some tweaks. Well, actually, the original GameGuru Classic had this idea you couldn't get up a certain angle. But because of the nuances of the physics engine, you could sort of leap up to the next bit. Even though you couldn't walk up it, you could leap up it with lots of series of jumps, which kind of defeated the object of a hill that you couldn't surpass. So you could do that now just with blockers. An invisible entity blocker would just keep you within a confined area. You'll see that in all the modern games. They just use invisible blockers, so you just can't leave. But the idea that there's certain hills you can't climb, yes, I think it'd be nice to look at that. Make sure that whether you run or jump, there are certain hills at a certain angle that you can't traverse. Underground caves using terrain editor, no. No, it'll be a hack. You would actually create a valley, like a steep canyon valley sort of thing, and then stick a roof on it. That's how you do caves with the terrain system. There's no specific cave maker in GameGuru Max. Does the terrain tab have its own hard-coded sounds, or you can change the sound profiles? Yeah, that was one of the omissions, wasn't it? That fact that when you painted grass on the terrain, it didn't sound like grass. When you painted rock. But the thing is, that's just a texture. How does the texture know what it sounds like? So being able to assign the sounds to those textures as you're painting to the terrain, great idea. It's not on a list, but I'm sure as we go on with the development and that feature crest keeps popping up, it's not a million miles from sanity to say, yeah, that's a good idea to do that. Now, I have exceeded my 50-minute calendar by 4 minutes, but we did have another discussion which says, you can exceed 15 minutes, but you can't exceed 20 minutes. So I'm afraid that's going to be it for this live broadcast. We've got to be strict here. All your questions will be answered. I'm sure that log has been recorded by YouTube. I hope the YouTube live broadcast worked. Otherwise, I've been spending 20 minutes literally talking to myself. and I will answer your questions in another format after this live broadcast. This live broadcast will be available on our YouTube channel. It will be recorded automatically by YouTube, thanks very much, and then you'll be able to view it anytime you like. So that is the end of the live broadcast for GameGuru Max. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope I managed to get a little bit of information over to you. And of course, it'll all go crazy on the GameGuru forums talking about what you want to hear about next for the next live broadcast. So until that time, I shall say thank you very much for your kind attention and have a great rest of day, night, morning, or wherever you are in the world. So goodbye.